In this segment, we're going to be working on the page I like to call Blue Roses, which is part of the Secret Garden Star Book. Now, for each of the pages, there is this guide sheet which explains the pattern paper that's needed, cardstock, and some of the other supplies. And then it goes on to talk about some of the measurements and scoring and some of the steps that are done in making this page. It's not meant to stand on its own. It's as a reference guide while you're watching the video. So I'm going to put mine off to the side so I can refer to it as we're working through this. So first let's look at the paper that we need for this project. For the background panel, we're going to use 2 sheets of Seed Fairy 12 by 12, and you can see the name is printed up in the top right hand corner. So 2 sheets 12 by 12. We're also going to need 1 sheet of 12 by 12. This paper is called Coming Up Roses. Then I've already cut apart from, there's a sheet, it's called Mayflowers, I believe, and it has 6 different 4 by 6 images. And so we need the roses. There's 2 cards that have roses on each of the pages, so we need 2 of them from each of the pages. So we have those roses. And that was from the 12 by 12 pad. And then from the 8 by 8 pad, we'll use 2 sheets of April Showers. Then we'll need a page for our die cut of blue cardstock, which coordinates a blue that coordinates with the paper collection. Now, many of the pages feature a Spellbinder Shape Abilities die, and in the Blue Roses page it uses the die called Butterfly Magic, and I will explain the tips that I use to create this panel when we get to cutting that out. But it's Spellbinder Shape Abilities, and this one is Butterfly Magic. They are low profile dies. They cut about a section that's about 4 by 6. So let's talk about some of the basic cutting that I'll do, and then come back and we'll do some construction. So for the background, from each of these pages we will cut a section that is 7.5 inches tall by 8 3/8 inches wide. 7.5 tall by 8 3/8 inches wide. There's no need to try to match anything up here. You can if you want to. I try to cut, if it doesn't matter what's on the other side, I just let it, try to maximize my paper usage when I cut. Now there's sometimes when it will matter how we cut, and I will explain those when we get to those particular pages. So background 2 at 7.5 inches tall by 8 3/8 inches wide. The blue cardstock, 7.5 inches tall by 12 inches wide. 7.5 inches tall by 12 inches wide will be the base for our die cut. That die cut is going to have some frames around it, and the dimensions for those frames are 7.5 inches tall by 7 3/4 inches wide. Now this particular paper definitely has an orientation, so pay attention. Make sure you get your 7.5 inches tall by 7 3/4 inches wide. And then our front panel, this frame, the outside dimensions are 7.5 inches tall by 12 inches wide. So that's our base cutting. I'm going to do that and then come back and we'll proceed from there. So here I am back. I have my 2 background pieces cut that, as you recall, were 7.5 inches tall by 8 3/8 inches wide, And I've also cut a strip of the cream cardstock to 1 inch, scored it down the middle, and put some 3/8 inch wide score tape on it, staying away from the very center of that crease on that score line. I've cut this about 8 inches long, just so that I can have I'll be able to trim it off exactly. I think in the instructions it says it's 7.5 inches, but I'll try to remember to change that so that you can not have to worry about getting it lined up exactly correctly. So when we put these two pages together, and this is our background, it's going to go like this, we want it to be able to fold nicely. And I have found the most success when I put it together in that I put the joining strip on when the two pieces are back to back like this. Now double check to make sure you have them both oriented the same way. And what I like to do is remove the tape backing from one side at a time and have that crease going pretty well in there. And then make sure everybody is nice and lined up. And come in from the side that still has the tape backing on it, and then just lightly to begin with put a couple of places in, and then you can come back more firmly, and then remove the other side. Again, I'm just triple checking to make sure they're both coming the same way and everybody is lined up nicely, and then come in and get that. Now before I burnish that down, I'm going to come in here and sorry I couldn't find a straight edge. Come in and just trim off those little excess pieces at the end. I can see these two are not exactly lining up here at the top. I might have cut somebody just a little bit off, but I will take care of that. And then once this is cut off nicely, I can come back and give this a good burnish. Now, we use this cream to join because there is a little bit of a gap in here, but that allows it to fold nicely down. But matching this front, you won't see that. You really won't see this too much because the pieces fit in of the panels come pretty close to each other. So hopefully that white there doesn't offend you. Now, before moving on from this panel, I would probably ink my edges, but I won't do that on camera because that's a little boring. Okay, so that's the back panel. Now moving on to the second panel, which is going to have the die cut out of the blue cardstock. And here's what that looks like. So hopefully you can see that. Let's see if I put a piece of white paper behind it. So that is the Butterfly Magic cut, and you can see it doesn't fill up the whole frame, but that's okay. What we're going to do is this panel needs to be a little bit longer than this anyway. So what we're going to do is use these two pieces of that we cut from the 8x8 pad to make kind of a C and a backwards C-shaped frame to go on each side. That'll give this a little more interest with the decorative paper, and also will extend this panel out a little bit. So the dimensions are in the guide, and it says that once you've cut these two pieces to their 7.5 inch tall by their 7 3/4 inches wide, we're going to mark the size of frame that we need. Now I like to have about a 1/8 inch reveal of the blue paper on all of the sides. So when I measure this, and the frame paper goes right to the top and bottom, to me, I want to cut 1/2 inch for the top part of the frame and 1 inch for the bottom part. And then coming in on the sides here, I'm going to measure from the center line, and that's going to be about 4 1/4 on each side. So I'm going to cut a C that's like that, and it's going to have a 1/2 inch at the top, a 1 inch at the bottom, and come in 4 1/4. Now, be careful when you cut these, because you need mirror images, because one's going to go on the left and one's going to go on the right. So I suggest to you that you lay it out with pencil, hold it up next to here, make sure you've got everything oriented correctly. You know, it's that old measure twice and cut once kind of thing, so that you get the proper frame, because you only have 2 sheets of this paper. Alright, so let's do that. So now you're getting an idea of what this page is going to look like. I'm going to do some inking around my edges, and then I'll put some tape on here to join. So let me do that. Again, when we put these on, we don't want them to be too close to the center fold, because it'll cause some binding. So I like to just kind of fold that one over and see about, you know, how far back. It's just a little smidge. The top and the bottom edges are always staying flush. So, you know, orient it on your work surface however it's going to work best for you. And I think I'll start with this bottom one. And I'm just kind of working my way up. But before I get that one stuck down, I want to make sure I get this one oriented correctly up there. Looks like it's going to fit nice and flush. Okay. Just go lightly to begin with in case you have to retreat. Take this top one off. I might as well take the side one off as well. There's one side. Again, hold that back from the center just a smidge so it won't bind. Just kind of making sure everything wants to line up and stay as straight as possible. Looks good. Now I'll get this last strip up here. And finally So there's our second panel. Actually, let me get out so here it is. That's how it's coming together. That's the second panel. Now let's work on our front panel. And for that one, we cut our panel 7.5 inches tall by the width of the paper, 12 inches. And now what we want to do here is to cut a frame. That is, just checking my instructions here, 3/4 of an inch at the top, 1 inch at the bottom, and 2 inches on each side. So 2 inches on the sides. And let me, I didn't score this. Let me score this in half first, because sometimes it's easier to keep that score while the paper is still whole. So I'm just going to lean over here to the side and score that at the 6-inch mark. Alright, there we go. So now, again, I'm going to do this with pencil first, at least on the two sides. And then I said I wanted the bottom edge to be 1 inch. So let me, now that I've made the 2-inch marks, I can just line up my ruler and just stop. And I'm making sure I've got it oriented. Yep, this is the bottom edge that I'm cutting at 1 inch. And my top is going to be 3/4 of an inch. And now I can cut those two sides at 2 inches. And if these frames don't just fall out, just make sure you come back in with your craft knife and get those corners. Don't tug at them, because that's how you get a raggedy corner. There we go. And make sure you save all of these scraps. Now, we could have maybe even used some of these roses to augment the ones that we're going to put on the frame instead of doing the fussy cutting, but I wanted something that looked a little bit different, so not all from the same paper. So got that. I'm going to do a little bit of inking. There we go, and we pre-scored these lines, so they're all ready to go as well. Okay, so now some fussy cutting. I'm going to fussy cut these roses out, and after I've done that, I'll be back to attach them to our front frame here. So I've finished my fussy cutting of all of the roses, and I've made a little layout here that I think I'm pleased with. I just put 2 on each side. And you can see I have my phone sitting out here. I took a picture of this layout, and I also had a couple others that I tried, and this is the one I think that is the most pleasing to me. So I've got my picture to refer to, because as I pick things up to glue them, I probably will, you know, put something down not quite the same. So let's just do a little gluing here. I want to glue this one first, these 2 together. And put these into sets first so they're a little bit easier to manage. Glue on the backs and the fronts. I'm just going to pick this one up here. I want it to be about like that. I use my pencil, I can see where I want to put the glue down and how I want it arranged here. That's good. And then just refer to my photo here again. And that one was kind of coming like that. Okay. Oops. Okay, so there is our front frame or panel. So let's see what we've got here. These are the 3 panels that will make up this page, something kind of like that. Now we'll do some scoring when we go to attach them and make them a part of the book, but for right now I think this gives you kind of an idea of what that's going to look like. So that is the pattern pages for Blue Roses.